As the saying goes, a tree without roots will not stand, and a nation without history will not thrive. It has become more pivotal now than ever before that Nepal understands its history in order to navigate its future. On today's episode, we have one such key figure in Nepal's political landscape, who comes from a lineage that has shaped Nepal's governance to what it is today. Please welcome Mr. Pashupati Shumsher Jung Bahadur Rana.
Thank you so much. I am delighted to be here with you and through you to address the people of Nepal, because I have always been devoted to Nepal and its countrymen.
Sir, you may be considered as a national treasure in terms of historical importance. You have witnessed several pivotal moments in Nepal's history. However, I did notice a particular figure that comes from outside Nepal's history, particularly Napoleon's statue. I was just wondering if you could give us some context about why the statue is here. Is he someone in history that you particularly admire?
Well, of course I admire Napoleon Bonaparte extremely much, but this is something that's come down from our old palace, Las Venivas, and it's here. It just happens to be here.
Well, that certainly seems to showcase your lineage. Speaking of your lineage and history, my actual first question for you today revolves around one of your publications. You have written many publications of great historic relevance, one of them being, correct me if I'm wrong, The Ranas of Nepal. Thus, you have a great insight on the debate about whether the Rana regime delayed Nepal's development or provided more stability. My first question for you today happens to be, how would you compare the Rana regime with the current government? Would you say that there was more accomplished during the regime for development and stability in Nepal than what has been achieved by KP Oli's government today?
I think we look at different dimensions of this question. First of all, the Rana period, which lasted 104 years,
Yes.
started with Jung Bahadur Rana. And Jung Bahadur Rana was an extraordinary man. In my view, the second greatest figure in Nepalese history after Prithviraj Shah.
Yes.
He took into his hands, in a tremendously difficult and very fragile situation, when there was great deal of fighting. The nobles of Nepal had killed each other, and all that had happened. And Nepal needed to come together and establish stability. In all this tremendous meltdown of things, Jung Bahadur emerged as a figure which gave Nepal stability, strength, and later, after he had visited England and seen its power, when he helped in the British at the time of the mutiny, he gained 4 districts for Nepal. Naya Muluk, as they say.
Yes.
And the addition of that vital territory is, I think, is the most important achievement of the Rana regime.
Yes.
Jung Bahadur was an extraordinary man. Physically small, but extraordinarily agile, with enormous courage. Great, I would say, a man who understood and imagined great deal of things. And his ability provided the stability that the country needed, brought it together. He understood the relationship with British India. He kept his relationship with China as well.
Yes.
There were 7-year missions which went to China all the time. And in his period, Nepal achieved an enormous degree of stability. Then you come to, I don't think we need to go to all the figures in between.
Yes.
The other person who did remarkable things was Chandra Samsher. Chandra Samsher is my great-grandfather.
Yes.
And he ruled for 29 years. And within those 29 years, he gave formal establishment of Nepalese independence, recognition by the British of that.
Yes.
And Chandra Samsher abolished sati. He abolished slavery. He developed the Chandra Canal up in Saptari.
Yes.
And, the number of developments that he did in his own way is quite extraordinary. So I think these things are the things that stand out in Nepalese history. To compare it with the present government is not even fair. We don't even have an adequate degree of honesty and efficiency. Of course, Prime Minister K.P. Wali, I think, is amongst his peers, amongst the Prime Minister, by far the most intelligent. But even then, he hasn't been able to provide the kind of government that Nepal needs, and the enormous possibilities of Nepal in the water resources field.
Yes.
It's that is something that has not even been, the possibility. We have 83,000 megawatts possible power.
Yes.
And 68% of the dry flow of the Ganges goes from rivers within Nepal. Given these things, if there is adequate government, if there is efficient government, and honesty to the purpose of Nepal, we could change and alter the landscape totally.
Yes.
So I think if you look at the possibilities and what is being achieved now, it's not even worth comparing.
Well, speaking of comparison, the topic of transitioning from the monarchy to the constitutional monarchy and then to the Federal Democratic Republic stands. I would like to ask you about your opinions on whether the transition from these different types of governments was actually handled effectively, or were there any critical mistakes that were made along the way?
Well, that transition, during that transition when King Birendra was ruling, and for the last few days for the negotiations with the Democratic and the Communist side, we came in. Lokendra Bahadur Chand was the Prime Minister, and I was Minister of Water Resources, Foreign Affairs, Finance, and Communications. And that negotiation, from a totally monarchic form of rule to democracy with a constitutional monarchy, was exceedingly difficult.
Yes.
In those 12 days, I think I slept, I don't know, maybe 20 hours, 24 hours. I was working all the time. And we moved that transition. Had a little bit gone wrong,
Yes.
the whole country could have fallen apart. It was like a trapeze artist walking on the rope.
Yes.
To balance that situation from a totally monarchic system to one with democracy, multi-party democracy, and a constitutional monarchy was an extremely difficult task. But fortunately, God was with us, and we had the ability, and we had the hard work, and we achieved it.
Yes. Another question I would like to ask is with regards to foreign policy during this transition time. Would you say that you were satisfied with the standing that Nepal had during the transition and after the transition compared to before when the monarchy was still there? In particular with the relationship with Nepal, China, and India.
I'm just trying to think about this. I think during that period of 104 years, Nepal maintained its independence with great success.
Yes.
It was an autocratic system. There's no question that it could be democratic in any way. But that negotiation from that point,
Yes.
When my grandfather was ruling and the major part of the negotiation was carried out by my father, Vijay Shumsher.
Yes.
I think that required enormous skill. And fortunately, my father had that skill, that ability, that imagination, and my grandfather had the honesty. That is how he was the last Rana Maharaja, and also the first Prime Minister of Democratic Nepal.
Yes. Well, since you have mentioned your great lineage, one has to ask, do you believe that Nepal truly made the right decision when it moved on from the monarchy system? Was abolishment truly the correct choice back
You
then?
mean the movement to the republic system?
Yes.
Well, the understanding on which that change took place was that Nepal would have multi-party democracy,
Yes.
but constitutional monarchy. And, if you look at England, you have a king like King Charles now.
Yes.
His position is totally decorative.
Yes.
But he gives such glamour, such dignity to the country.
Yes.
And the rule is done entirely by the parties, the Conservative Party or the Labour Party, or once or twice the Liberal Party. But you have a crown, you have the glamour, the dignity of the crown above them. We, unfortunately, as I said, we don't have either honest or efficient government.
Yes.
And the president, unfortunately, is a fine man. I know him very well. The President Ramchandra Paul is a fine man. But that glamour, that dignity, that traction that the monarchy provided does not exist now.
Some would argue, from my generation, that glamour, that majestic facade held by the monarchy is merely that, just a facade. To people from my generation, we have never seen a proper monarchy. We do not understand the difference between having a president as the head of state compared to a king. That being said, would having the monarchy come back in Nepal be something that you would look forward to if that were possible?
Well, we've adopted this stance, but the party, when it started,
Yes.
when we made the original change, was based on Rashtra, Prajatantra, and Udarwad, and that is the basic policy of the party. When the republic came, when the Hinduism was abolished and we became a non-religious state, then only these questions arose.
Yes.
Up till then, the principles of liberalism, democracy, and nationalism were naturally the ones that were important for us.
Well, some would argue that having a monarch would mean that the people would have less of their voice represented in the governance. Would you say that would be the case if we brought back the monarchy, or is it no different from the government we have right now?
Well, as I said, the vision of a monarchy is only ornamental,
Yes.
decorative. That kind of glamour and dignity a president cannot provide. It's not that
But why is it
he
required
is
to
a
be
good
provided?
person.
That's
Huh?
the question, isn't it? Why
Sorry?
do we need such glamour in governance when it should be for the service of the people? Why is such glamour still required in modern day and age?
It's not a necessity. The necessity for this country is multi-party democracy,
Yes.
An efficient and honest government that develops the possibilities of the country. We have this enormous possibility in water resources. We are the most beautiful country in the world. We have the Thrive, we have the highest mountain in the world. And Kathmandu itself is an extraordinarily good place. So, when it became a republic, then this issue arose.
Yes.
Otherwise, up to the time of, I think constitutionally we became a Hindu state only in King Mahadir's time. Up to that, it was taken for granted.
Mm-hmm.
One didn't talk about it, but that's who we were. A Hindu country with total tolerance for all other faiths. And we didn't even declare this identity. We just had it.
Yes. Well, you have criticized our government for its corruption, and undoubtedly, we are known for our corrupt government because out of all of the 180 current countries that were rated on the corruption governance, we scored a total of 36, which is incredibly low. That being said, what do you think the root cause of corruption really stands right now in our current government? And what would be the best approach to solving it?
Everybody knows that the major parties are corrupt. Why they are corrupt to this extent, I don't know. You make the money, you spend it to win the election, you come into government, and your purpose is to make more money.
Mm-hmm.
The possibilities of Nepal's development, the possibilities of this extraordinary holy country, all that is that's neglected.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we could take these demands into consideration, if we could truly work for the country and its people, we would not have the situation where virtually every young person is gone out of Nepal.
Mm-hmm.
We could provide all the employment here if we develop the country properly.
Yes. There are many people who criticize the government for focusing on irrelevant bills. For example, the recent social media bill that seems to sort of restrict the right to freedom of speech, for example. In your opinion, do you think that such bills do pose a threat to our people's freedom of speech?
No. The whole point of democracy is freedom of speech, freedom of thought. You should be able to express yourself through whatever media you want, whether it's the TV, whether it's social media, whether it's, now it hardly ever exists nowadays, the radio.
Yes.
All these things should be allowed because that is the basis of a democracy.
Yes.
So restraining a democracy, of course you need rules.
Yes.
You need laws and rules. You can't go outside laws and rules. But within that, every person should have the freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of expression.
That being said, what is your stance on the bill currently?
Sorry?
What is your stance on the social media bill that has been debated on for some time now?
I'm afraid I'm not proficient in that field.
Yes.
I'm an old timer, and I'm just learning social media now.
Yes.
But one must be able to recognize one's limitations and always be prepared to learn.
Well then, let me turn around the question and ask about technological development in Nepal. Would you say that Nepal should focus on catching up with other countries in terms of development like AI, or should we focus on just infrastructural development instead of IT?
Well, in this area, I think about these fields of social media, of artificial intelligence, count for about 1.5% of our GDP. And that should be developed to the maximum possible. Because this is a field that could introduce the new, the young, and bring back those people who've gone out of the country and to remain here and become active and become, I don't know, the enormous possibilities of this modern part of the world is something that we need to address.
That being said, you are a figure of Nepal who has had many influential positions in Nepal's government.
Yeah.
As someone who has been the Minister of the Panchayat and Local Development and also held several influential positions, I would like to ask you, what was the greatest highlight of your career while working in governance? What achievements are you most proud of?
I think the most important achievement was the negotiation from monarchic system to the democratic one, because that saved the country when it was in the middle of a very dangerous situation. I have often compared this to a pot in which the water is boiling. Nepal was boiling then. If we had not been able to control and put a lid on the situation, then the country could have spilt out of the pot. And I think that, of course, we couldn't have done it if King Birendra had not been the man that he was, and had it not been Prime Minister Lokendra Chand who allowed me to, who we cooperate together in making this negotiation. I think that is what I'm most proud of.
Yes. Well, compared to the past, today many people believe that there is a chance of great conflict coming back in Nepal. Would you say that that is something that you see in Nepal happening? Would you say that there might be conflicts of interest among the people?
I am deeply dissatisfied with the efficiency and honesty of the management of the government.
Yes.
But the degree that you're talking about, I don't think Nepal's that frail.
Yes.
There is some inner strength in this country. It's a country with a tradition of holiness, from Litchavi times we've been working with. We have balanced ourselves between two huge neighbors. We survived as an independent state, even at a time when Britain ruled an empire on which the sun never set. So compared with what we were, we are less.
Yes.
But the danger of this country falling out of the rating does not exist. To that extent, I think everybody does do their best.
Yes. Well, that certainly is nice to hear. I also heard another nice thing about you. You were a student at Oxford University, which is well known around the world for being one of the most prestigious universities in England. That being said, how would you say that your education in England, particularly at Oxford University, shaped who you are, what your political thoughts were, and your career back here in Nepal?
Well, I think, I spent 10 years in England. First 6 years in Avebury, getting my school education done from up to A level. And during that time, the first time, belonging to a privileged family like mine, I had to fend for myself. We used to have to run in the snow in shorts and a shirt. And we used to live in dormitories that were, there were 50 people in one dormitory. And all this gave me the strength to come back to Nepal. I always meant to come back to Nepal. There was no question of doing anything else. But that ability to take the rough and the trouble was what I gained in Haileybury. In Oxford, my whole vision expanded. Oxford provides an education that is quite extraordinary. And that gave me, I did PP, politics, philosophy, and economics.
Yes.
And you would think that philosophy is not terribly relevant. But linguistic philosophy gives you the ability to analyze things, to think on the spot.
To think critically.
You don't have to go all prepared necessarily. You can listen to the other person talking and see the weaknesses in his argument. Find the chinks in what he said, and based on that, you can reply. And that ability that I gained was from Oxford. And I was very fortunate to have been there.
That being said, would you say that you would have become the same person you are today and have as much success in your career as you have now if you had perhaps studied here in Nepal or gone to a university such as Tribhuvan University?
No. I think Tribhuvan University is an excellent university. But as you just said, Oxford is on the top ranking universities of the world. Even today, it compares with all the major. Some years it's always at the top. And this was not said in Nepal. When I was living in Bangalore, there was a governess called, she was a Belgian called Madame Langford Ray. And the idea of going to England was not, my mother had just lost her husband. And she didn't want to send her only son away. This lady told me, my father had entered me for Harrow. And of course, when he died, that was cancelled. And my mother wanted her son to be with her. So this lady told me, she said, Pashupati, if you stay here, you will become a vegetable. So please go to your grandfather and shed a few tears and tell him that you want to go to England because that was his wish and that is the way you will develop. And I did exactly that. I went to my grandfather and I said, my father wanted me to go to school in England, to have education in England. And my grandfather was extremely fond of me. And because of that, when I shed these tears, he agreed that I should go to England. So I went to Haileybury. And later on, I was actually entered for Christ Church. But my tutor in history, a gentleman called Melville, told me, Rana, why don't you go and try for an examination at New College? So I did. And when I did that again, he had also told me, the important thing is you can do all the studying, but you must catch the eye of the person examining. So I went to the interview in Nepali clothes.
Yes.
So immediately that picked me out from the run of the mill.
Yes.
And of course I had prepared for those questions that were set to me. I answered them. And luckily I got an exhibition, which is a scholarship to New College. So I spent 3 years, one gap year, which I had to come back because my mother thought the world was going to end. So I had to pay an excuse to the warden and told him that I had affairs to look after because my father's affairs were not lucrative. And I came back for a year. But I spent 3 years in Oxford. And I think in my youth, those were extremely happy years.
Yes. Well, times have changed since then. Nepal's literacy rate has undoubtedly increased. Would you say it is satisfactory enough that Nepal has the education system it has today? Is it enough to prepare for the future leaders? Is it enough to teach our current youths how to lead our country? Or is there something missing in our government, something missing in our education?
I think Tribhuvan University may not be one of the top universities, but it's a good university.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very good university. It's got people who are devoted to learning. When I was in Cedar, I was in Kirtipur campus, and I got to know all the intellectuals and quite a few of the teachers there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Tribhuvan University is also extremely good. There's Kathmandu Industrial University in Dhakal, which in my view is even better.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say Nepal, this thing that we have to improve is the school system at the village level, at the rural schools.
Yes.
There, there are very few good teachers left.
Yes.
And that part of the education, although I tried my bit when I was education minister, it requires a great deal of improvement.
Mm-hmm. Well, that being said, what are your opinions exactly about students in Nepal leaving our country to study abroad? Would you still support this as being someone who went abroad to study yourself?
Well, at the moment, except for a few exceptional institutions or schools, the general school system requires a great deal of improvement. But you have to improve.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot take things that are, it's unfortunate that things are not as good as they should be,
Mm-hmm.
but we should strive in that field. I did my best when I was education minister, and I think there are excellent possibilities to try.
Are there any lessons you would like to share back from your time as the education minister?
Well, that was my first ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And I entered that ministry with great interest, and I traveled all over the country. I established schools in many, many places. Of course, I established most in Sindhupalchok.
Mm-hmm.
There were just 2 high schools
Mm-hmm.
in the whole of Sindhupalchok at that time. One in Barbise and one in Chotara. And I think I was able to enormously increase that. I did the same for schools wherever I could go.
Mm-hmm.
Because the basis of somebody's character, of his training, of his basic knowledge, comes from education. Without education, you cannot achieve all this.
Yes.
So we have an enormous task in improving the education system, and we should persist in doing that.
Aside from lessons that you have learned from being an education minister, overall, to all of the viewers that are watching our episode today, for my final question, I would like to ask if you have any advice you would like to give to the future leaders of Nepal.
I think the future leaders of Nepal should have a clear view and purpose for developing this wonderful country.
Mm-hmm.
They must be honest. Because if you are not honest, you cannot serve the proper purpose of government. And honesty by itself is not enough. You have to be shit. You have to improve the system. You have to improve the quality so that all the enormous possibilities of this, in my view, Nepal is the most beautiful country in the world.
Mm-hmm.
We should develop that. If we properly advertise, we could double or treble the tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So if we work hard at it, this country can be made into a wonderful country. A country that holds its head high as an independent state, which it always has been, and a country that will be worthwhile for all the younger folk to come back here and to be part of this wonderful nation.
Well, that was certainly moving. Thank you so much, sir, for contributing your words here on our show, Words for Tomorrow. As a part of our appreciation, we would like to give you a small token of appreciation and gratitude.
How very kind. Thank you, Rabindra.
At the front,
Extremely
you would
kind.
see the words Ad Meliora written on it. In Latin, it means towards a brighter future.
Young lady, your name is Anuricca Giri?
Yes.
Well, I'm delighted to have met you, and thank you for taking the trouble to take this program with me and giving me this opportunity to address through your media the country. Thank you very
sir.
much indeed.
Thank you, sir.